A ship the length of 4 football fields is moving silently through the waters of the Indian Ocean. No transponder, no tracking signal, no flags. Its name is huge. It belongs to the National Iranian Tanker Company, and it is carrying 1.9 million barrels of crude oil, worth $220 million. The United States Navy has over 10,000 personnel, a dozen warships, and dozens of aircraft deployed to stop exactly this kind of ship. And yet, huge sailed right past them. This is not fiction. This happened, right now, today. And when reporters asked the Pentagon about it, the official response was, "The blockade is working." Today we're going to tell you what is actually happening in the Persian Gulf, in the Strait of Hormuz, and on the high seas, and why the gap between what Washington is saying and what is actually happening may be one of the most consequential stories of 2026. To understand the supertanker, you need to understand the war that created it. February 28, 2026. In the early hours of the morning, the United States and Israel launched coordinated surprise airstrikes on Iran. Dozens of military and government sites were hit simultaneously. Iranian Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei was assassinated. Senior Iranian officials were killed. The world woke up to a war nobody had officially declared. Iran's response was immediate and severe. Within hours, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps issued a single order: close the Strait of Hormuz. Now, for most people, the Strait of Hormuz is just a name on a map. But let's talk about what it actually means. The Strait of Hormuz is a narrow waterway, at its most constricted point just 34 kilometers wide, sitting between Iran to the north and Oman to the south. Before this war, 3,000 ships passed through it every single month. It carried 25% of the world's seaborne oil trade and 20% of all liquefied natural gas on the planet. When Iran closed it, the world felt it within days. Brent crude oil surged past $120 a barrel. Qatar Energy declared force majeure, meaning it legally could not fulfill its contracts on all its exports. Kuwait, Iraq, Saudi Arabia, and the UAE collectively lost 6.7 million barrels of oil production per day by March 10th. Then, 10 million barrels per day by March 12th. Petrol prices in the United States hit $4 a gallon by the end of March. European gas benchmarks nearly doubled. The European Central Bank revised its inflation forecasts upward and cut its growth projections for the entire continent. In the Gulf states, Qatar, Kuwait, Bahrain, which import more than 80% of their food through the strait, grocery shelves began to empty. By mid-March, 70% of food imports to the region were disrupted. Prices for basic staples rose 40 to 120%. One strait, one closure. The entire world economy shook. The United States military moved fast. American warships, aircraft carriers, destroyers, and submarines flooded into the region. U.S. forces began attacking Iranian naval assets. Trump claimed by early March that 158 Iranian naval vessels had been destroyed. He declared on March 9th that the war was, quote, very complete, pretty much, and that the strait had reopened. It had not. Iran continued to block and attack ships. Iranian forces boarded merchant vessels, laid sea mines, fired on tankers. 5 crew members were killed in attacks on 2 vessels in the first week of March alone. Trump repeatedly threatened to bomb Iran's infrastructure, to bomb it, in his words, back to the Stone Ages, if it did not reopen the strait. Iran's Revolutionary Guards responded that the strait will not be open to the enemies of this nation through what they called a ridiculous spectacle. On April 8th, a temporary 2-week ceasefire was agreed. Iran promised to reopen the strait. Trump said Iran failed to do so knowingly. The ceasefire held, barely, but the strait did not fully reopen. On April 11th and 12th, U.S. and Iranian negotiators met in Islamabad. Talks collapsed. J.D. Vance announced failure. Trump said he no longer cared about negotiations. On April 13th at 10 in the morning Eastern Time, the United States imposed a full naval blockade of Iranian ports. The blockade, as Trump described it, would stop any and all ships trying to enter or leave Iranian waters. U.S. Central Command deployed over 10,000 personnel, more than a dozen warships, and dozens of aircraft. In the first 24 hours, 6 commercial ships were turned back. No Iranian vessel attempted to breach the line. Trump declared on April 22nd that the blockade was costing Iran $500 million every single day. The Pentagon estimated Iran had lost $4.8 billion in oil revenue by May 1st. Washington's message was clear. Iran is being strangled. The blockade is working. Iran cannot export a drop of oil. But here is what was happening at the same time. By April 20th, just 1 week into the blockade, maritime monitoring firm Lloyd's List reported that at least 26 ships had already bypassed the U.S. blockade line, moving in both directions, toward Iranian ports and away from them. By April 29th, Iranian state media claimed 52 vessels had breached the blockade. The U.S. Navy said it had redirected 48 vessels and seized 1 Iranian-flagged ship, the Tuska, in the first direct enforcement action of the blockade on April 19th. 2 different realities, 2 completely different sets of numbers, one from Washington, one from the water. And then came the supertanker called Huge. Huge is a very large crude carrier, one of the biggest ships on Earth. It belongs to the National Iranian Tanker Company. It was loaded with 1.9 million barrels of Iranian crude oil, valued at approximately $220 million. According to maritime tracking firm tankertrackers.com, Huge switched off its automatic identification system, its transponder, on March 20th, after departing from the Strait of Malacca. It went dark. No GPS signal, no radio, no way to track it through normal means. On April 13th, the very day the U.S. blockade went into effect, Huge was reportedly still in Iranian waters. It somehow departed. Over a week later, the ship was spotted off the coast of Sri Lanka, already thousands of miles away, deep in the Indian Ocean, heading towards Southeast Asia. As of today, tankertrackers.com reports that Huge is passing through Indonesia's Lombok Strait, heading toward the Riau archipelago. Destination, a Chinese refinery. $220 million of Iranian oil, past 10,000 U.S. military personnel, past a dozen American warships, through international waters. Undetected, unintercepted, delivered. Huge is not alone. It is part of something much larger, what analysts call Iran's ghost fleet. For years, because of Western sanctions, Iran has been building a shadow network of tankers. Old ships, bought cheaply, often uninsured, frequently unregistered under their real owners. They disable their transponders. They transfer oil ship to ship in the middle of the ocean. They use false documentation. They sail under flags of convenience. Newsweek reports that Iran currently has 18 empty supertankers it can use as floating storage, sitting in the Persian Gulf, waiting for an opportunity to move. Before the war, more than 90% of Iranian crude was already going to small refineries in China, often at discounted prices, often through this ghost fleet. The infrastructure to evade was already built. The U.S. blockade is trying to shut down a system that was specifically designed to operate outside the system. Iran also has a backup. Its land borders with Iraq, Turkey, Afghanistan, Pakistan, Turkmenistan, Azerbaijan, and Armenia remain open. In 2024, Iran was smuggling over $1 billion worth of oil into Pakistan by land every year. Every single year, before this war even started. That pipeline did not disappear when the U.S. Navy showed up. So when the Pentagon says the blockade is working, what exactly does that mean? On one hand, the numbers are real. The U.S. Department of Defense estimates Iran has lost $4.8 billion in oil revenue since April 13th. Kepler, a commodities data firm, estimates Iran could lose up to $250 million per day in revenue by mid-May as storage fills up and production is forced to slow. Iran has approximately 20 days of storage capacity remaining before it must start shutting down its oil wells. Iran's economy is under severe pressure. Its currency has collapsed further. Inflation is punishing ordinary Iranians. The regime is under more economic strain than at any point in recent memory. But on the other hand, 52 ships have breached the blockade by Iranian count. At least 26 by independent maritime trackers. A $220 million supertanker sailed through completely undetected. The blockade is simultaneously costing Iran billions and failing to stop Iran from moving billions. Both of these things are true at the same time. That is the contradiction the Pentagon does not want to fully explain. Meanwhile, the rest of the world is watching and paying. Global shipping through the Strait of Hormuz, which saw 3,000 vessels per month before the war, is now running at around 5% of that level. The world's energy markets remain deeply disrupted. Europe is facing what economists are calling a second major energy crisis. European central bank projections warn of stagflation, low growth and high inflation, pushing energy-dependent economies like Germany and Italy toward recession by the end of 2026. UK inflation is forecast to breach 5% this year. The Gulf states, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, the UAE, have lost billions in oil export revenue because Iranian attacks have disrupted their own operations. Countries like the Philippines, Zimbabwe, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Nigeria, and Vietnam are facing severe domestic fuel shortages. China is closely watching. More than 90% of Iran's oil exports go to Chinese refineries. Beijing has significant economic interest in keeping that oil flowing and has been accused of helping Iran's ghost fleet operate. Russia has benefited from higher global oil prices throughout the crisis. India, which bought the Russian S-400 air defense system and which has historically balanced between the US and Iran, is now caught in the middle, forced to source energy elsewhere while watching an unpredictable conflict unfold next to its western waters. Diplomatically, the picture is complicated but not entirely hopeless. As of today, a ceasefire, now in its third week, appears to be holding. Iran has submitted a 14-point peace proposal through Pakistan as an intermediary. The United States had previously submitted a 9-point framework. Trump said on Saturday he is examining Iran's new proposal, though he expressed significant doubt about whether a deal is likely. The UK and France have been pushing for a multinational mission to reopen the Strait of Hormuz to commercial shipping as an alternative to the US-only blockade approach. China and Russia vetoed a UN Security Council resolution on the matter. Negotiations continue. The ceasefire holds. The strait remains largely closed. The blockade continues. And somewhere in the waters off Indonesia, a supertanker named Huge is delivering its cargo, with or without anyone's permission. Here is the truth of this situation, stripped to its essentials. The United States has one of the most powerful naval forces in human history deployed in this region. And Iran, under full blockade, with its supreme leader assassinated, with its naval fleet decimated, with its economy under historic pressure, is still moving oil, still funding itself, still defying the blockade. Not because Iran is militarily stronger than the United States, it is not, but because the ocean is vast, because ghost fleets are built for exactly this, because China needs Iranian oil and is not asking too many questions about how it arrives, because land borders don't care about naval blockades. Trump says the blockade is costing Iran $500 million a day. Iran says 52 ships have broken through. A $220 million supertanker just proved both sides may be right. The Strait of Hormuz has not reopened. Negotiations have not succeeded. The war has not ended. The world is paying more for energy, and the Huge is heading toward port. What happens next in the Persian Gulf will shape oil prices, global inflation, and the geopolitical order for years to come. The blockade may be working in Washington's press releases. Whether it is working in the water, that is a different question entirely.